Hi, my name is Sonia Marushka. I'm a senior at Benton Academy. I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to do this interview. Would you please provide your name and some of your background information about your education and career?
Sure. I am Amy Huseth. I am currently the VP of Inside Sales at Sphero Solutions, which is an environmental software company in Chicago. I went to undergrad at Northwestern University in Evanston, got a BS in communications, and immediately from there went into sales. I spent 13 years at my first company, 13 years at the next company, and now this is my third company in about 28 years of sales.
Perfect. So my first question for you is, do you have a set of ethical principles that you use when faced with difficult questions or situations in your career?
Yeah, I have come across a number of situations, and while it may sound cliche, I base a lot of this on my dad. He was an executive in business and taught me a lot. And he used to say it's a lot easier, to just do the right thing and sleep at night. So I think when I have to make a decision, there have been a number of them, I kind of run it by three gates. Could I tell my dad the decision I made and be okay with it? Could I tell the CEO of the company if he walked into my office and said, why did you do this? And could I tell my kids and be okay with them understanding why I did what I did? So I feel like if I set with those three, it kind of helps me through some decisions. And if I'm thinking twice about something, I tell people just don't do it. I've seen people make really poor decisions, and I always look back and think, was that worth it for you to do that? So when in doubt, just don't do it.
Yeah, that's a good point. My second question is, do you think that any particular business question, decision, or situation represents a difficult ethical issue?
So I've run into a number of them, and a lot of times what happens in business, and maybe I don't know if this is what you're looking for, but sometimes your emotional side of things, or what you think is right, or what you feel okay emotionally doing, may not match up with what the company is telling you to do, or what your boss is telling you to do. And so I think that's when you kind of get into a tug of war between what's really the right thing, but what is possibly my job security on the line for not doing
Right,
the right thing.
right.
And I've run into a couple of those where I've kind of had to ask myself, what am I okay, once again, sleeping with at night?
Right.
And sometimes it's not always the same thing.
Yeah. Have you faced any obstacles in applying your ethical principles in business situations?
Yeah, I can give you two situations. One, when I was a much younger manager, I had somebody working with me. She was working for me, a single mom, and really was running on financial problems. And I found out that she was basically stealing money from the company. She was expensing things on her company credit card and trying to write them off, saying they were for contests she was holding for a team, but they weren't. She was actually spending the money. It didn't total a lot, but it totaled probably a few $100s by the time I found out. That was a situation in which, I brought her in and talked to her, and she really begged me, that she had messed up and she wouldn't do it again. And she was a single mom and she was running into financial issues. And how could I do this to her if I told the company? And that was really something where I really had to run it by and say, okay, if I keep her on and I don't tell somebody, and the CEO walks into my office and says, you made that decision on behalf of the company, and she might go on and steal again. And I would always think about that. So that was something I personally felt really badly about, because I did have to report it. We did have to let her go that day, and it really made her life a lot more complicated. I think about her a lot, but that's when I would go back to anybody and say, was that few $100s really worth your career?
Right.
And I think most recently, as I was older, I ran into a situation where I had somebody working for me, and conversely, somebody on the executive board. This is my last company. The person I had working for me was in charge of events, and we had gone on a company-wide event, and this executive recently joined the company, and he felt like everything he was getting at the event wasn't enough. They didn't have the best room for him, and they didn't have the wine waiting for him in the room. And they didn't have the room location he wanted. And he kept requesting it from this woman who worked for me. And she said, I'm trying to do everything I can, but some things are just falling short. And so he came back to me and said, I need you to fire her. And I said, she's been with me 8 years. I'm not going to fire her. And so he said, no, she hasn't done anything, for me that I wanted her to do. And really it was a sales trip for our salespeople. We had just invited executives as a perk. And so I had to call my immediate boss and say, look, the head of the CFO is telling me to fire this person. I am not doing it. You want to do it, you want to take me, that's fine. But that was the deal once again, that it just wasn't the right thing to do. And so I kind of said, no, I'm not doing it. I eventually did end up leaving the company within a year because there were a number of things like that I finally had to say, if that's how this is going to roll, I'm not okay with that.
Right. You have to stick to your morals at the end of the day.
Yeah. So did that answer the question you were asking?
It did, absolutely.
Okay.
My last question is, do you have any advice that you could provide for me as I think about ethical issues that I may face as a young woman who will one day pursue a career?
Wow, that's a loaded question, Sonia. I like I said, I kind of always I have girls and I tell them when they're trying to make a decision, I kind of say, here's the deal. If you're between two things, and this really goes with anything, make the decision in your head and sit with that for a couple hours and see how you feel. Are you thinking, oh, phew, I'm relieved I made that decision? Or, I feel solid that decision, or I can tell people I made that decision and feel proud of that. And if you sit with that for a couple hours and you don't feel that way, then you better think about the other decision. And just try not to be reactionary to anything. And, at the end of the day, and my dad taught me this, like, you have your name and your integrity, and to be able to look somebody in the eye and say, look, I am just to the core honest and authentic, and I'm accountable, and mean it, because you can say, look, no, I do not lie. I am honest. I do what's right. To be able to say that is really a big thing. And so I guess in life, just make sure you can always keep saying that.
Right. Okay, that was really helpful. And those are all the questions that I have. Thank you so much again for your time. This was so helpful.
No problem, Sonia. It was lovely talking to you.
You too. Have a nice day.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye-bye.